Let's talk about NFL Week 14. Let's run through every game. I'll share my reaction and my analysis. Number one, the Bills beat the Steelers 26-15 on Sunday Night Football. Bit of an ugly game. A good win for Buffalo, though. They are they're 10-3 now. And I love the Bills' red uniforms. I think they look really, really awesome. The Steelers' offense was unimpressive. The drops continued, plus Big Ben had 2 interceptions. He had a pick six before halftime. He had another interception on a deep ball. With 7 minutes left in the game down the right sideline. Pittsburgh is 11-2 now. They're likely going to finish 13-3 or 12-4. The final 3 games for Pittsburgh are the Bengals, the Colts, and the Browns. Colts and Browns feel like really tough games to me. One thing to consider is that Pittsburgh has played 3 games in the last 12 days, which is in a 12-day span. That's crazy. The Ravens, they played them on the 2nd of December. They played Washington 5 days later on the 7th, and then 6 days later on the 13th, they played Buffalo. And so they just never got a bye week because of COVID and because of the NFL protocols and stuff, and they haven't had a normal week in a long, long time. And not to mention they're missing a bunch of players on defense, due to COVID and due to injuries. They had 2 linebackers in the Bills game, which were Avery Williamson, who they traded for recently. They also had to move Marcus Allen temporarily from safety down to linebacker just for that game. And so context matters. I don't think the Steelers are a bad team. I think they are losing games that I'm not surprised they're losing. And I think, again, they're going to go 13-3, 12-4. And then from then on, we'll see how they do in the playoffs. But again, the drops cannot continue. The Steelers keep dropping passes, and it's not good. Deontay Johnson's a player I like. He's had kind of a breakout year. He's dropped the ball a lot, and it can't be allowed to continue. And the Steelers got to nip that in the bud as soon as possible. Now, the Colts beat the Raiders 44-27. Phillip Rivers had 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers at all, actually. Jonathan Taylor, the Colts rookie running back, remember, a second-round pick who I've been saying all year, don't draft running backs in the first round, don't pay running backs. You can draft a guy in the first round, but don't pay him after that first contract. Jonathan Taylor had 150 yards rushing for 2 touchdowns. The Colts ran for over 200 yards. And Phillip Rivers, as the year has gone on, has gotten better and better and better, and it feels like the Colts potentially could make a Super Bowl run. They're playing their best football late in the year, and they're going to be a hard team to beat when the playoffs come around. Now, the Raiders, they actually fired their defensive coordinator, Paul Guenther, after this game. They gave up a lot of yards, a lot of points. Derek Carr had 2 interceptions. As a team, the Raiders had 3 turnovers. And the Vegas Raiders are 7-6 right now. And to finish the year, they're just wilting. Now, their final 3 games are the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Broncos. All 3 teams that are, I think, playing well. They all won this past week. So, the Dolphins lost to Kansas City. But the Dolphins are a good football team. They have a great defense. The Chargers won. The Broncos just won. Right now, if the playoffs started today, the Raiders would not make the playoffs. And then also, are they good enough to beat the next 3 teams they play and give them an opportunity to get into the playoffs? I'm not sure they are. And so it'll be a very fascinating final 3 weeks of the year for the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Chiefs beat the Dolphins 33-27. The Dolphins they got great corners on the outside. The problem is the Dolphins did not have anybody really to match up with Travis Kelce, the Chiefs' tight end. He had 8 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown. And Kansas City is nearly impossible to stop. It feels like all you can do is slow them down. There are certain teams do certain good things. And nobody really has put together a good enough game to entirely stop Kansas City. The Raiders beat them. They had a really good game. Part of that was that their offense played really well. They took risks on 4th down. But Mahomes had 3 interceptions in this game. Yes, people are going to talk about Mahomes had a bad game. 2 of the interceptions were tipped. One was literally tipped on a screen pass. The other was a ball a little bit high, tipped off his running back's hands on a check down. Kansas City was up 30-10. I wouldn't say that Kansas City really struggled in this game mightily. It was close. It was interesting. And against a good defense, they had a couple turnovers. But people are saying, like, Patrick Mahomes had a bad game. I'm like, I don't know know I don't think he really had a terrible game. Now, Mike Gesicki, the Dolphins tight end, had another touchdown. He had a really great touchdown catch between 3 defenders, and I went, ooh, that's awesome. And Mike Gesicki's had 6 touchdowns this year. He's turned into kind of a security blanket for Tua. And I really like Mike Gesicki. He's just kind of a little unknown gem who's played really well at tight end for the Miami Dolphins. Now, part of why I believe Aaron Rodgers is going to win the NFL MVP is that, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt that Patrick Mahomes' team is a lot better than what Aaron Rodgers has to work with. He's got better receivers, better weapons. And I watched Patrick Mahomes throw 3 interceptions this weekend, and 2 of them I thought were questionable, whether it was his fault or not. Certainly one of them was just a tip pass that was unfortunate. But Rodgers could not win a game where, fault or not, if Rodgers had 3 interceptions, he would not win that game. Now, Mahomes did fairly easily. He beat the Dolphins. And if you have an ugly game and your team is still winning by 20 points, then how valuable are you? It does matter to me. And by the way, the Packers won again. The Packers won. They beat the Lions 31-24. Rodgers was 26 for 33 passing, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford got hurt. I felt bad for Matthew Stafford. I think it's probably his last game in Detroit. But back to the MVP conversation. MVP is about appearance. And people, I look at Aaron Rodgers and I go, the year he's had, the numbers he's putting up, they present the best of any other quarterback around the league. And then it's also rare for a non-quarterback to win MVP. So I think Aaron Rodgers this weekend was solidified as the NFL MVP. Unless Patrick Mahomes does something crazy and then something bad happens to Aaron Rodgers, I'd be surprised if Aaron Rodgers was not the 2020 NFL MVP. Also, by the way, shout out to Robert Tonyan, the Packers tight end. He's in the conversation for the most improved player in 2020. Probably won't win the award, but when I do my award show for Strong Opinion Sports, Robert Tonyan's going to be in the conversation there. I've really been impressed with his growth as a tight end. Made a lot of good catches this year. He's awesome. Now, the Chargers beat the Falcons 20-17. There were 3 interceptions in the final 5.5 minutes of the game. Matt Ryan had 2. Justin had 1. Matt Ryan had 3 interceptions on the day. His final one came with 31 seconds left. That led to the Chargers kicking the game-winning field goal as time expired. So both teams are now 4-9. I will say, I watched a little bit of this game, and I kind of crapped on this game, saying I don't care at all. And then I was looking around, I was like, I just got kind of sucked in. I like watching Justin Herbert. I guess apparently it doesn't matter what's going on in the game. I just want to watch Justin Herbert because he's fun to watch and interesting. And it was actually a decently entertaining game, despite the fact that both teams have bad records. Now, both teams are 4-9 after this game, and it was a lot of bad football, but it was close and interesting. So I was shocked how much I enjoyed what I saw of that game. The Cowboys beat the Bengals 30-7. Andy Dalton had 2 touchdowns. He beat his old team. It had to feel good. I mean, I was so happy for Andy Dalton, where the Bengals lost 3 fumbles and they did not play very well. And I really kind of felt robbed and kind of sad. It's unfortunate we never got to see Andy Dalton with his new team against Joe Burrow with Andy's old team. Would have been a fun matchup. I would have liked to see that. The storylines would have been fun. And, I mean, if Joe Burrow had played, that game would have been a lot more competitive against Dallas on Sunday. So, I don't know. I feel like it's too bad we missed out on a potentially great matchup because of Joe Burrow's, knee injury, season-ending knee injury. It's like, Joe Burrow, you're so selfish. Why couldn't you play in this game? Not really. I'm being sarcastic, but I wish Joe had played. It would have been a lot of fun. The Seahawks beat the Jets 40-3. 40-3. I think I threw out like the possibility, like, maybe the Jets could pull off the upset. No way, not even close. I mean, it's 40-3, and Russell Wilson, by the way, the Seahawks quarterback, was 20 for 27 passing, had 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's really good the Jets fired their defensive coordinator, isn't it? Like, clearly that move was brilliant, paid off. Wonderful. It did nothing. I don't know. Maybe it did something that I didn't see. Whatever. Feels like they just paid Greg Williams to leave, and he gets to finish his career his season at least hanging out, doing very little. I will say that Jets safety Marcus May had a really awesome interception where a one-handed interception that he tipped to himself. So I thought that was pretty cool. But other than that, I don't know, not a very exciting or interesting game. Jamal Adams, by the way, had 5 tackles for 1 sack and a tackle for loss. So he didn't have the huge day I would have thought. No pick six, no interception, no forced fumble, nothing like that. So even though Jamal Adams didn't have the big game I was hoping he would have, he did get the blowout win. So I'm sure Jamal Adams walked away feeling very, very good from the game against the Jets. The Titans beat the Jaguars 31-10. Derrick Henry had 215 yards rushing for 2 touchdowns. Now, Gardner Minshew played most of the second half for the Jaguars at quarterback. He's actually going to be the starting quarterback next week. And he came in after Mike Glennon threw an interception in the third quarter. And Gardner, rallied the Jaguars a little bit. He had a couple good drives. He had a touchdown pass. He was 18 for 31 for 178 yards in the second half. And I just walked away going, man, Gardner is a great leader. And he's a very average talent quarterback-wise. Like, he's got an average arm, but he does the little things right. He's really good, got great attention to detail. And Gardner Minshew is a good enough quarterback that if you can put a good team around him, he can win. If you put Gardner Minshew on the 49ers, for example, he's their starting quarterback. He'd win a lot of games. He'd do very, very well. If you put him on the Colts, if you put him on, list another team that's got a really good roster around their quarterback, Gardner Minshew's no slouch. He's not the best starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's a backup, but I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. Not really. He needs very specific conditions for him to do very, very well and win a lot of games. But again, if you put a good team around him, he can do good stuff. So I am very curious what we will see from Gardner Minshew this offseason. Is he going to get traded? Is he going to go anywhere? I don't know. Maybe the Jaguars keep him to mentor Justin Fields. That feels like a really big waste. I'd be very disappointed if that was true, because Gardner, I think, is good enough to play somewhere. So we'll see. I'm very fascinated what happens with Gardner Minshew. He could be a trade piece. I mean, a team could trade for Gardner Minshew. I think it'd be a relatively small trade. I don't think you need to give up a lot. And if you're a team that's missing a quarterback, like the Patriots, or, if Pittsburgh wants a good backup quarterback to maybe replace Big Ben eventually, or the New Orleans Saints, we'll see what happens. But I'm curious if Gardner Minshew goes anywhere and does anything this offseason. The Bears beat the Houston Texans 36-7. And the game went really completely opposite of how I expected. Mitchell Trubisky played very, very well, at 3 touchdowns, made good decisions. And this Bears-Texans game really confirmed to me that the Bears just need good, consistent quarterback play. And whatever it takes to make that happen, whatever shuffling you need to do this offseason, whether it's a new coach, new quarterback, maybe both, the Bears need to do whatever it takes to make that happen and go get consistent quarterback play. Because they're a decent defense with some solid weapons on offense, and they just need a quarterback. And the few moments where Trubisky plays very, very well, I find them infuriating, because I go, why can't you do this all the time? It's just like, come on, man. Don't tease us like that. Now, Deshaun Watson, I think, deserves a lot of credit, actually. His team is a mess all around him. Offensive line, they can't run the ball. Their defense is terrible. They're dropping passes. They have it's all awful. And I'll do a whole breakdown of this game, explaining the mess around Deshaun Watson and what happened even in this game. But Deshaun continues to make really good decisions despite the problems around him, and he's not adding to their problems. So I think Deshaun Watson has actually made an incredible amount of stuff this year, where we've seen so many quarterbacks, when everything around them gets bad, their decision-making often falls off a cliff. We haven't seen that from Deshaun Watson at all. He deserves a lot of credit. He's playing very, very well, and I'm impressed with him. Now, the Cardinals beat the Giants 26-7. The Giants defense actually, I thought, played very well early on. They had an awesome goal line stand on 4th and 1 from the 1-yard line. And I remember watching this game being very excited. Like, oh yeah, like the Giants, they're in it. It's going. It's good. And then the Giants offense could not put up any points until the second half, when they were down 20-0. And it's like, man, like, support your defense. Come on, help them out. Now, the Giants offensive line did struggle, so I'm not putting it all on Daniel Jones. But I am curious how people who, I've gotten a lot of feedback. People are like, Daniel Jones, he's the guy, you're wrong. I wonder how those people feel today, knowing that I thought that Colt McCoy played better than Daniel Jones did. So, the time we saw him start earlier this year when Daniel Jones was out with an injury. So, I don't know. I thought Daniel Jones had a really frustrating decision on a 3rd and 1 where he threw deep instead of taking what was open underneath. And I just Daniel Jones, like, I don't know, man. The Giants have a lot of good pieces there, and I don't want them to waste them. So we'll keep seeing how Daniel Jones does. I think it makes sense to keep playing Daniel Jones because, I mean, Colt McCoy's not going to be a franchise quarterback. You might as well continue to develop Daniel Jones, see what you can get out of him, and see if he gets any better. But so far, I go, ugh. And then the offensive line is bad, and it's a mess. Now, the Buccaneers beat the Vikings 26-14. And Vikings fans get all mad at me anytime they think I'm praising their defense. I want to clarify, they're missing the point. I'm not praising their defense. Their defense has problems. They're starting Jeff Gladney, a rookie corner, who I like him, but it's going to take him time to get better. And there's a lot of execution problems on defense for Minnesota. But I am praising their scheme and their design. Mike Zimmer confused Tom Brady a couple times with his play calling on defense, and I love that. So I think people are misunderstanding my praising of Minnesota. It's their scheme and their design I like, not necessarily the execution we're seeing week to week. Now, Tampa threw a Hail Mary before halftime. They got a PI call on that Hail Mary, set him up for a field goal right before halftime. It was kind of, I mean, just like, I just felt bad for Minnesota. Like, that sucks. The Vikings made too many mistakes to win the game. Their kicker, Dan Bailey, was 0 for 3, kicking field goals on the day. Brady was solid, and the Buccaneers won. They're now 8-5. So, interesting. I predicted them to win, and they did. Sorry, those aren't related. I predicted them to win, and it's interesting they won. I'm not saying like it wasn't me like going, suck it, I'm right. I don't really try to gloat at all ever. The Broncos beat the Panthers 32-27. I got this game totally wrong. I even said like some line about how, who do you believe more in, Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock? And it's actually pretty funny how exactly the opposite happened. Drew Lock had 4 touchdowns. He played very, very well. And I said this before, but I'll keep saying it. I don't believe Denver should give up on Drew Lock. I would give up on Daniel Jones. I think Drew Lock has got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of good stuff going for him. I think the Broncos are too good to replace Drew Lock in the draft anyway. And I really want to see Drew Lock next year in year 2 of Pat Shurmur's system, hopefully with somewhat of a real offseason and a healthy team around him. I mean, listen to the Broncos' weapons when they're healthy. You have Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Cortland Sutton. They got another Noah Vanette, something Vanette, this other tight end. They have weapon after weapon after weapon, the Denver Broncos do. And when they're healthy next year, on offense and defense, I would go, man, watch out for Denver. And Drew Lock is improving as a decision maker. And I know people have such a hard time observing growth. People want to view other human beings as static and unchanging and, all good or all bad. And people often don't leave a lot of room for nuance or growth. And I thought that Drew Lock has been growing all year. He's been playing pretty solid recently. And I think we're seeing the maturity of Drew Lock. And I mean, I just think quarterbacks sometimes need patience, and then also consider the crazy circumstance that's gone on with Denver this year. I just don't know that you can say, Drew Lock is terrible. Well, everybody got hurt, and COVID happened, and it's been crazy. So I have patience for Drew Lock where I don't for other quarterbacks around the NFL. Now, Carolina did have the ball, though, in this game. 2:48 left in the game, down 5. And they could not put together a scoring drive. So the Panthers had an opportunity to win, and they couldn't win the game. And at some point, I've been saying this for a while, Carolina, I like Teddy Bridgewater. He's a very solid quarterback, and people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but I've said it before, so continue to get mad at me if you want. He's got a low ceiling, Teddy Bridgewater does. And at some point, Carolina's going to need to upgrade at quarterback to get a more talented quarterback who can make bigger plays and do more than just run the offense at a high level. I mean, Teddy's very good. He's a good quarterback who's good for rebuilding a team, and he'll be their guy for maybe even a couple of years, and that's totally fine. But at some point, Carolina's going to need to replace Teddy Bridgewater, whether it's now or sooner or even later. Teddy's not the guy forever in Carolina. The Eagles beat the Saints 24-21. Jalen Hurts made his first ever NFL start. He beat a top 3 NFL defense. Jalen's better than Carson Wentz. He's a better leader, better decision maker. He moves the ball better, can run around better. He should be the guy in Philadelphia. And Taysom Hill, I did a whole topic about it. He's decent. I walked away very confident, though, after this game that Taysom Hill is fine, but he's also not the long-term answer for the Saints at quarterback after Drew Brees does eventually retire. Washington beat the 49ers pretty soundly, 23-15. Washington was up 23-7 at one point. I was sad it wasn't a back-and-forth game. It was kind of a very ugly defensive-led game. Alex Smith was average, of course. Right after I praised him, Alex Smith was kind of just okay. But I stand by everything I've said about Alex Smith. Alex Smith is kind of the perfect quarterback for Washington right now. And then Dwayne Haskins played a little bit. So Alex Smith got hurt, left the game. Dwayne Haskins played okay, made some good throws. And I do believe that sitting behind Alex Smith might be the best possible thing for Dwayne Haskins moving forward. I mean, if he eventually becomes the guy because of the time he spends behind Alex Smith, that'd be awesome. And it's very possible that is what eventually happens. Chase Young returned a fumble for a touchdown that helped Washington. It's pretty cool to see a rookie doing what he's done this year. Nick Mullins had 2 costly turnovers that led to 2 touchdowns for Washington. So, look, I still believe Nick Mullins is an outstanding backup, but he's a backup. And I don't think you ever want Nick Mullins playing more than maybe 3 or 4 games in a year max. I mean, my expectations are much lower for Nick Mullins than a Jimmy Garoppolo guy, who Jimmy Garoppolo is getting paid multi-million-dollar contracts to do whatever he's done this year and last year. And I would replace Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. I'd get a new starting quarterback, but I would keep Nick Mullins as the backup. He's a good guy who he's cheap, he's decent, he's solid. He can be a good backup for 3 or 4 games, but you don't want Nick Mullins being your quarterback for long stretches of time. He's done that this year, and he's being shown as he's a backup. He's clearly not much more than that. But again, also Nick Mullins just lost to a really good defense in Washington, so I don't know. I think people are a little too hard on Nick Mullins and not hard enough on Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's a guy you're paying a ton of money, and he's been very subpar this year and even a little bit last year. So I don't know why people are so quick to give Jimmy Garoppolo a pass, but be hard on Nick Mullins. It feels like it should be the opposite. Be harder on the guy you're paying a ton of money to, not your backup quarterback. You know what I mean? Shout out to 49ers rookie receiver, by the way, Brandon Ayuk. He had 10 catches for 119 yards in this game. That's awesome. And the Ravens beat the Browns 47-42 on Monday Night Football. I already talked about this game, did a whole big breakdown. Lamar Jackson was amazing. Baker Mayfield played very well. I think this was probably the game of the year. I walked away confident, in the legitimacy of the Browns, and I walked away reminded of the superhero type, superhero-esque nature of Lamar Jackson. He's amazing. I just go, wow, we've just never had another Lamar Jackson in the NFL. Maybe Michael Vick, but Michael Vick never ran the way. Not really. I mean, Michael Vick, it was in a different offensive system that didn't really work as much to his strengths. And then maybe Randall Cunningham, but Lamar Jackson is just amazing and special, and we've never really seen it before. I mean, he's probably the best athlete in the entire NFL. Now, we also cannot forget the last game of Week 14 I haven't talked about. I talked about it in the last episode, but I'll retouch on what I said in that podcast. The Rams beat the Patriots 24-3 on Thursday Night Football. Number one, I would not blame Cam Newton for the Patriots' struggles. They're 6-7. They got no offensive weapons. Remember, Tom Brady couldn't win with this roster. Cam Newton never had a chance. And the Rams are 9-4. They've had 2 convincing wins in a row. Their defense is phenomenal. They're probably the best defense in the NFL. When Jared Goff is on, he's really, really good. So if you can get Jared Goff playing really well and on a hot streak at the end of the year in the playoffs, I mean that the Rams team is very, very scary. They run the ball very, very well, and the LA Rams look hungry to get back to the Super Bowl. Remember, they lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They had a down year last year. Now they're like, hey, we're back, and we're coming with a vengeance. They want to return to where they were before and make things have a different outcome. So my dream NFC championship right now would be the Rams and the Packers. I think it'd be a fun matchup. I want to see Aaron Rodgers against that defense and see what would happen. So we'll see what happens. That's my recap of NFL Week 14. Hope you enjoyed it. And guys, I love you so much. Hope you have a great day. That's all I have for today. Have a great day. Bam, we are done.